The Just Baseball show for Wednesday, March 8th. We're not waiting until 2 a.m. to record a post Cuba and the Netherlands recap of game one of the WBC. You know what was pretty cool, though? I was looking at the schedule for the WBC. I think it's on Thursday. And because of like how the time zones are structured, this just kind of further proves that time is a social construct. I think China plays at like 5 a.m. Eastern and then like 11 p.m. Eastern. So they're playing in the same day, according to us Americans. Do you think that's cool, Aram Layton?
Yeah, that is kind of cool.
Right?
Is that technically a double header?
Like, no, it's not, which is the thing. I'm pulling up the exact thing because I think on, Thursday, you've got China playing Japan at 5 a.m. Eastern, and then you've got them playing again at 10 p.m. Eastern. And you've got Cuba playing Italy at 6 a.m. Eastern, and then playing Panama at 11:30 p.m. Eastern.
So it's just going to be like random baseball whenever you throw the TV on, which I kind of like. That reminds me of like when we pretended to care about the KBO for like a couple weeks during COVID.
But it's more accessible because the KBO is like 2 a.m. And
It
I know
was 2
those are
a.m.
your hours to cook. Those are not
Yes.
my hours to cook.
That's the hours where I'm doing like rough searches on like whatever prospect data I can find, and then what can I throw on in the background for a little bit of fun. So that's perfect for me. That's why COVID was like, that's where I cooked, man. That was it for me. I don't have to leave the house. I can just stat dive. No numbers are changing because no one's playing, and I could just throw some random sport on at 2 a.m. That's where I cook. But I can basically do that right now too because the regular season hasn't started, and these games are going to be on at all weird hours of the night.
You were the one MF that had fun during COVID. Like you were the one happy person during COVID. I can't believe you.
I obviously like a lot of repercussions across our world and felt for people in a lot
You're
of
right.
ways. Of course, but
Good time. Good
I
time
was
to
I
dish
was I
on
was fine.
Fangraphs.
I was having a great time. My big mental clearing thing is if it's not stat diving and watching film, it's video games. Warzone was peak around that time too. So
Yeah.
I was having a ball.
Got you. All right. I was stuck playing a non-bubble 2K, so that was my issue. But yeah, you've got weird timing. I'd say it's more like the World Cup in Qatar or like the Australian Open, because some of those matches were at socially acceptable times versus the KBO was not. But if you stayed up last night at 11 p.m. and went to bed at 2 a.m. after Cuba and the Netherlands went after it, Godspeed. And thanks for being a massive baseball fan.
Yeah,
Today
that's
we're
it.
doing two different top fives instead of a top 10. And we're almost at the end of the top 10, I promise. They're really fun. We love them, and we know how much you guys love them, but I know we're kind of clamoring to do something else because there's so many of them. I feel like Mr. Krabs, ringing the bell. It's like day 15, give it up for day
Yes.
15 on the
Yes.
top fives. But we are going to do a couple of lists that I'm really excited about. We're doing top five DHs and top five utility players in baseball. Utility is, I think, where I'm going to cook personally because I've already dished out my Brendan Donovan take. After you let that sit with you for a minute, how do you feel about my Brendan Donovan take?
See, I kind of did with that take what I do with most of your takes. It's just like in one ear, out the other. There's no digestion period. It's just kind of like I almost forgot it happened.
Cool.
But because you feel like you're important enough for me to be just digesting that take over the last 24 hours since we last spoke. Yeah, I kind of woke up at like 2, 3 a.m. yesterday.
In a cold
I
sweat.
was thinking of, yeah, just like, why would Jack say that? Why does he think that? And I realized it's because you like boring players.
Yes.
And I don't mean that in a negative way. Brandon Donovan, I would take him. First of all, he'd be one of the best players on the Marlins. So the team that I've grown to hate, but watch more than any other team usually. That shows you how good, like how well-rounded he is. But at the same time, he's boring because he doesn't really excel at anything other than being kind of good at everything and playing all over. So I'll give you that one. Like, I think that's a fair take because he gives you a lot of different things that not a lot of players in today's game are able to do. Like not a lot of players in today's game excel at a lot of different things, or at least are pretty good at a lot of different things. So I'll give you that one. That said, your ceiling is so capped there. And like if Lars Nootbaar hits the ceiling of what every person on earth apparently thinks he's going to be, or, you know, you even have some of the other guys in the fold there that I think even a Dylan Carlson ceiling is still all-star. I don't know if Brendan Donovan's ceiling is ever all-star unless he has a ridiculous first half and then, you know, kind of rides that to a surprise all-star appearance or two. The other guys I think are multiple all-stars in their best case scenario, but you're risk averse too. So again, it's an on-brand take, and I don't think it's a bad one. I don't.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, if you said, Jack, and this is really pushing my risk-averse nature, Jack, you have to commit a felony. But if you do commit a felony, Brendan Donovan is the second baseman for the Chicago White Sox. I wouldn't say no, I'm a good egg right away. I think I'd think about it. I probably would end up saying no, because I don't want a felony on my record, but like Brendan Donovan is the second baseman for the White Sox sounds hot.
So he's one of the guys that you're considering a felony for.
Yes, I think so.
Well, so honestly, you jogged a thought in my head, and the last thing I'll say on this, Brendan Donovan, and it's an example of the kind of player that he is the missing piece for like 8 teams. Right. Like, or at least one of the missing pieces for 8 teams. Like, how about the New York Yankees? Wouldn't you love to plug him in left field? You know, you talk about the White Sox. Wouldn't you love to plug him at second base? Marlins, wouldn't you love to plug him anywhere?
Yeah.
You know, like there's just even a good team or a mediocre team. Like he is a difference maker in one way or another. And I think that says a lot about the kind of player he is. And I already got all my mean comments out at you in the first couple minutes. So I'm going to be nice the rest of the time.
That's awesome. Wow. I'm excited for the rest of the podcast now. All right. 2 teammates that I want to talk about real quick, and then we'll jump into it. On Monday, Jack Flaherty, 3 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 5 punch outs, 1 walk. Steven Matz, 3 perfect innings with 4 punch outs. Matz, it's great to see him succeed. Flaherty, that's a game changer if he's good. Did you catch any of the Flaherty outing, and what did you make of either watching him or seeing that line?
I only watched, honestly, like a few pitches because I think it was right when we were recording Show and Go with Taylor Davis. But, you know, I that's a name I'm watching, obviously, because even if he's 70% of what we've seen from him in the past, that's a difference maker for the Cardinals, right? And, you know, I think it's probably bold to assume that both of these guys are going to help you, but I think one of them can. And I'm hoping Flaherty because, you know, again, I'm not saying like kill Steven Matz, but I'm hoping that Flaherty is the guy that kind of makes that leap because we know what he can do for this team, and he takes them internally. There's very few players that like internally can take you from really solid to, oh, look out for them as a World Series contender. And I feel like right now for the Cardinals, I know you have to consider them in that tier 1 group, but I'm not taking them World Series contender seriously until they figure out the pitching thing, whether that's, you know, outside help, adding an arm, or in the rare occasion like this is with Flaherty, finding an internal option that can end up being a, you know, number 3 type starter for you. I know people think that Flaherty can be, you know, a frontline guy. I think that'd be, you know, a 1 in a million chance at this point, given how banged up he's been. But if he can be a 3 starter for them, I mean, that puts them in a really good spot. And I thought he looked pretty good in what I saw.
I think so too. You know, when you think about X factors, I think there are 3 that really jump to mind. Flaherty is certainly one of them. I think Jared Kelenic is a massive X factor for Seattle.
Yeah.
And I think Tyler Glasnow's availability is a massive X factor for Tampa, because all of a sudden, if Glasnow makes 25 starts this year, that is a top 3 rotation in baseball. And we're going to talk about rotations at the end of this week. But if Glasnow doesn't, you got to piece it together with, you know, maybe that's Taj Bradley's audition. Maybe it's, you know, a little bit more of a swingman type, like maybe Patino's throwing more innings than you want him to. Glasnow is a game changer. Kelenic is a game changer because if he is good in left or in right, whichever one Teoscar Hernandez is not playing, that's a flawless team pretty much, except for Robbie Ray. And then St. Louis, if they have a Flaherty that is a 3, cool. I mean, they're solving some of the starting pitching concerns because that's the only weak spot. So,
especially with Waino has not been off to the bat, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt as an older guy. You know, older guy is generous too, but like as an old man, you know, getting going in spring training, maybe it takes a little bit longer to shake the cobwebs off. But I'm a little worried. Waino's not looking that great, and if Waino is not what he was last year, all of a sudden that rotation has even more of a hole to fill there. And also you got to count on Michaelis, being what he was in stretches. Like if those guys don't replicate, you got a lot of pressure on Jamont, and then hopefully one of Jack Flaherty or Steven Matz. I am very interested to see how a fantastic organization handles this situation, because this is a challenge. And I think that they've been a little bit casual about it so far.
Well, and can we add that Jamont hasn't even looked good this spring?
Has he not?
No, he hasn't. So, and think about, in terms of proximity, the two arms that are closest, and one actually has prospect pedigree, the other really doesn't. Like Tink Hens, great prospect pedigree. He's in high A this year.
Yeah,
Gordon Graceffo. Right, like Graceffo, he's in double. You're banking on Matthew Liberator, who has stunk it up in his MLB cameos, and Connor Thomas, who on his best day is 90.
I like it's Connor Thomas season, baby.
I hope it's Connor Thomas season. I love him. I think he can get out to the major league level. But the question is he starting a game in the World Series? Because if so, oh my gosh, Rome has fallen. So that's the big issue. One negative thing, and then we'll get to the two top fives. Matt Manning, inning and a third, 4 hits, 4 earned runs against him. It was a fastball low and away. That was the call when he plunked Justin Turner in the face with a hit by pitch yesterday.
Yeah.
I want that guy to be so good, so bad.
Yeah, me too.
It's just not really clicking for him at all right now.
It's weird because he's shown us flashes, right? Where like at points last year, even we're like, oh, there's Matt Manning again, and there he is. And, he was a guy that I really liked as a prospect and hit a wall. And then all of a sudden now we're like, okay, he's coming back. And man, he just does not look confident out there. I think it's that simple. And I'm worried, from the perspective of not only is he not hitting his spots, not only is he getting knocked around, now that's kind of just like another thing in the back of your head. Not only do you miss a spot down and away, you hurt a guy pretty bad. And of course, not his fault, not intentional, but you got to think about it from a confidence standpoint. I'm trying to throw strikes. And am I not only struggling to throw strikes, I'm struggling to keep people out of harm's way in the batter's box. Like I can promise you, Matt Manning feels horrible about it. And that only stifles the confidence even more. Thank goodness it sounds like Justin Turner. It's more just like surface stuff, right? Like he needs 16 stitches, I believe, but nothing broken. I actually caught a similar, I was pitching when I was 16, line drive straight to the head, split my eye open and it like messed me up for a little while. But what's crazy is the kid that hit it felt horrible and it messed him up for a little bit. And I remember talking to him and being like, dude, it's good. Like, don't worry about it. But he said like, it just kind of lived in his head. So I'm imagining a Matt Manning just like, that's got to live in his head a little bit. And I hope that he's able to get through that. And obviously, thank goodness Justin Turner's okay. But yeah, I am worried about Manning because, again, this is a Tigers team. Scooble's on the mend. He's throwing 5 times a week. I just saw that recently, not, in terms of just playing catch, which is great. That's a great sign in his recovery. But they've got a lot of moving parts here. And if Matt Manning can't throw, they're going to be leaning on Mason Angler. Watch out for him. Their Rule 5 draft pick from high A to potentially be one of their consistent starters in that rotation. What I will say, though, is Erod has looked very good. So that's one good silver lining out of this. But the Tigers have got a lot to figure out in the rotation, too.
I like that you mentioned something positive because I was going to ask another negative question. I think everybody thinks that the Oakland A's are going to be the worst team in baseball this year. Is Detroit the second worst team in baseball on paper?
It might be. Riley Green looks fantastic, by the way.
He does look fantastic.
Good. Hit a backside home run the other day. I was like, man, there he is. I'm all in on the Riley Green bounce back. I think Torque's going to bounce back to a degree. I think Javi can't be worse. But even all that considered, how is this team going to be good? I don't see how.
I don't see it either. Like I can see a world. I have yet to truly buy into any pitcher aside from Brady Singer in Kansas City, but I'm more bought into their offense than any aspect of Detroit.
No, and I kind of just like I think they're just a little bit more serious. So I don't even know how to describe it. I hate using that word, but
I know what
they
you
have
mean,
a little bit more of a plan.
Which is funny because like they're the fun-loving Royals, like they're the youthful energy, and Detroit, like they don't really have much happiness going on in that clubhouse. It feels like there's really no happiness emanating from them in the last like several years, which sucks. I feel really bad.
The Tigers could use a Zach Greinke. That's the craziest part is Zach Greinke is going to be in that Royals rotation, along with Singer and Brad Keller and Lyles, which is not a good rotation, but
No.
at least Zach Greinke can go out there and he's going to give you like a 4.5 ERA and not just blow up, every fifth day. Where when it comes to the Tigers, I still don't even totally know how that rotation is going to fill out. Again, when Skubal comes back, that's going to be great for them. When they get these other options back, that's going to help. But right now, it's Erod, Matthew Boyd, Michael Lorenzen, Matt Manning, and Spencer Turnbull. And if Manning is struggling the way, it looks like he is, if Turnbull is, kind of more like we've seen Turnbull for the majority of his career, and even Matthew Boyd, like that, is that a guy that you can really for sure say will be, giving you competitive starts every fifth day?
Lorenzen,
and even Lorenzen, I could see all of that almost falling through. So it's going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting.
Hi, I'm Michael Lorenzen, and my fun fact is I can hit too.
I can hit too, but no one uses me as a hitter.
Yes, exactly. My final thought on the Detroit Tigers: best thing to happen to the Tigers franchise would probably be the Pistons winning the Wembanyama sweepstakes. End of thought. All right, let's jump into the utility list. Top 5, 2 honorable mentions. The 2 honorable mentions come from the same team. Whit Merrifield and Santiago Espinal, both with the Blue Jays. They fulfill different needs for Toronto because Merrifield is second base and corner outfield. Espinal is second base, shortstop, third base. I think they're fighting hard for that starting second base job right now. Espinal has had a great start to the spring. I love Espinal. I think that he would be a great White Sox because he is a great 9 hitter. He has no slug. Whit Merrifield, we know, is one of the best base stealers in recent memory. Problem is, he had a 298 OBP a year ago. I think that Espinal's stock is up. I think Merrifield's stock is down. And I think Espinal and Merrifield are probably going to normalize somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that whole, I guess showdown, for lack of a better word, because I think Merrifield has the ability to give you way more. I think Espinal is a really solid option in terms of the defense he plays. He puts bat on ball, but especially when I don't want to over reference this on the podcast, but like Whit Merrifield's still fast. And the reason why he didn't steal as many bags last year was, as you pointed out, he got on base at a 298 clip. When he got on base at a 317 clip in 2021, he stole 40 bags on 44
tries. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a guy, and I also just feel like he just wasn't running as much last year because, like, I mean, why even bother for a lot of points of the season? Like, I don't know. It just didn't seem like they were in positions for like him to just go. Like that team was struggling to really do anything offensively. And then of course he moved. But I think with the improvements that we have to try to facilitate stolen bases, I want to see what Whit does. I want to see if that just encourages him to run more. I just think that you can get more from a Whit Merrifield. I also really like what he brings in the outfield. He's a great defensive outfielder, or at least a really good, really solid one. Yeah. And that's the difference between him and Espinal there. So I think Merrifield's the better utility guy by definition. But I am interested to see who contributes better for them this coming season, because there's a chance it could be Espinal, but I'm still going to bet on the pedigree and the tools that Whit Merrifield brings to the table.
Right. So Whit obviously can play the outfield and can play a good outfield. Espinal plays a great infield at multiple spots. Like, he is a better overall defender than Whit Merrifield. Problem is, he doesn't play the outfield. And you've got Matt Chapman holding down third. You've got Bo Bichette at short. So really that just leaves the second base competition. And if Whit wins it, you also have Kevin Biggio on the roster. I think it's the Jansen Kirk Moreno conversation. You've got a surplus there as second baseman of Biggio, Espinal, and Merrifield. They're obviously not going to move Whit because they just traded for Whit last year. Why don't you move Espinal? Because obviously his price is a lot higher than Kevin Biggio's is right now.
Yeah, I've thought about that. And it's one of those things where it's like, God forbid somebody gets hurt, right? Matt Chapman, who's had hip surgery in the last 2 years. Let's say Chapman gets hurt. Now, all of a sudden, you're wishing you had Espinal because you don't really have anybody else that can play third base at a high level. And think about the drop-off from a Matt Chapman defensively to, whoever else you would plug in there, not named Santiago Espinal. I always look at the rosters like that, and I'm like, oh, you should just trade this guy or trade that guy. And then over the last few years, I've held myself accountable to this and like monitored the team. And just kind of say, okay, how much did they end up using the guys that seemed like a surplus? And more often than not, it seems like guys go down, man, and you're always happy that you have the depth. That said, if they get to like June, July, and everything's clicking, and Espinal's just buried, and Witt's playing well, I think that's where you look to make that move. But going into the season, I think you flaunt your depth, you feel good about it, and then when it's time to make a move, Espinal keeps you from having to trade an Addison Barger or one of your other exciting prospects, which I think they're going to do it. And I'm really interested to see how that goes. Or if a team finally calls and just makes an offer that they can't refuse on Espinal, because I'm sure a lot of teams have inquired. I'm sure the White Sox specifically have literally inquired. I'm not sure if there's been any reports around that, but it'd be malpractice if they didn't.
Well, now that they have signed Elvis Andrus to be the second baseman, I think that pursuit is over. But that sucks because Espinal is better than Elvis Andrus. All right, number 5.
Andrus was good last year.
Andrus was good last year, but do you think Andrus is going to be good again this year?
No. But with no basis, merit, or analysis, I'm lazy, and you can just fault me for that. But no.
Yeah, same.
I don't think so.
I mean, same. All right, number 5, Chris Taylor with the LA Dodgers. Taylor, he was an all-star. He was great. Signs a 4-year, $60 million deal. You wanted the Marlins to get him, and then all of a sudden he pumps out a 35% K rate.
Yeah.
Couldn't make contact last year.
He must have thought he signed with the Marlins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I loved him, man. And maybe it was a little bit of that like playoff honeymoon, because he really has performed, in the postseason in spots. But here's the thing, man, is even with a poor season last year, he gave you 2 wins above replacement. Yeah, and he couldn't have been worse offensively. Like, this was a season that was on par with like before he figured it out, right? Like, he has never had a season with a WRC plus below 100 besides when he first came up with Seattle.
And some people like 40 games, like, right? Yeah,
and some people listening might be like, he played for Seattle. Like, yeah, he didn't figure it out until later. So, I think this is something that he's going to bounce back from. I do wonder if there were some injuries or what it could have been, but he's 32. I don't think he's over the hill. He still hit the ball hard. He still ran well. I think something just kind of went awry for him. Maybe it was physical. Maybe it was just with the bat and he just couldn't quite get back there. But would you be surprised if Chris Taylor is right back to 20 home runs in a 120 WRC plus or even a 110 WRC plus?
No, I'm not going to be surprised at all. And the other thing that I think a lot of people are ignoring, and I know that you love Miguel Rojas as a guy, I don't think Miguel Rojas is the starting shortstop for the Dodgers on opening day. I think
you don't think so?
I think it's Chris Taylor.
Interesting. I don't know, because here's the interesting part too is Miguel Rojas was going to play in the WBC. And once Gavin Lux went down, I think the Dodgers said, you can't go. We need you here. Maybe that's just because they didn't want to risk losing another guy. I do wonder what their approach is there, because Rojas is going to be a better defender, even though Taylor's good at short. But I guess it just depends on how they feel about Vargas, who still is just not swinging in spring training, I believe. Which, by the way, is the most eye-wash thing I've ever seen in my life. Can I comment on that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Miguel Vargas taking live ABs away from other dudes.
Dumbass.
To just track. And I don't know if it's the Dodgers. I don't know. I don't want to claim that it's Vargas and knock him. You can go do that on the backfields. I was just talking to a few minor league guys that are like, dude, the big league guys will come on the backfields and get additional live ABs. Jazz Chisholm was just with the Marlins the other day, not playing with the big league team, playing on the backfields with the minor league guys, just getting reps out there. It's the same game. It doesn't matter. Like, just go get your live, your live reads, your takes on the backfields. It's still the same thing. Taking live at-bats where guys that can swing away from them in spring training is so eye-wash, it's crazy. But anyways, I love Miguel Vargas, so it's okay. Depending on how they feel about Vargas, I think is the interesting key here, because there's a legit scenario where wouldn't Chris Taylor just be playing second base and you got Miggy Rowe at short?
There's a chance. Yeah. I mean, if Vargas is not playing on opening day, then I think it's probably Rojas at short and Taylor at second. But you got to remember when Seager was dealing with his fragility, and he was out of the lineup, it was Chris Taylor playing short, and that was pre-Trey Turner too. Taylor didn't have to play short last year. I think he had one appearance at short, but his most common spot in the infield is at shortstop.
Yeah.
Gun to your head, Chris Taylor's a better offensive player than Miguel Rojas.
Oh yeah. Gun to my head. You don't even need to put a gun to my head.
But yeah, we put guns to our heads a lot.
Yeah, it's honestly, I use that term too frequently. I got to find a new one.
Yeah.
But
I got to stop asking people to punch me in the face. You got to
yeah,
stop asking people to put guns to your head. Yeah.
yeah. No. So here's my thing. And this is why I think Chris Taylor is going to be really important to the Dodgers this year. We've talked about how the Dodgers have more question marks than they've really had in recent memory. And like, let's go through them. And I'll say yes or no, if you would be surprised if this guy is no longer, and I'm just looking at roster resource, if this guy is no longer starting at this position by July or June, whatever month you want to choose. Trace Thompson in center field.
Not surprised.
David Peralta in left field.
Not surprised.
Miguel Vargas at second base.
Surprised.
Fair, but he is a rookie. So I agree with you, but like at this end of the day, like there's still some question there. And then Miguel Rojas at shortstop.
Not surprised.
He can play all those positions. And he is probably the next man up at all of said positions. So that shows you even a diminished Chris Taylor is super important to this team, because if he gives you exactly what he gave you last year, they're still going to be rolling him every day at one of those spots. And I think one of those positions is going to fall through. So Chris Taylor might be on the back of this list, but he might be one of the most important utility guys that we talk about in this episode.
And brother, if Michael Busch is not on the Dodger roster at the end of April, we riot. Fair?
They need him real bad.
So bad. And Michael Busch is really good. All right. Number 4, another LA guy, Brandon Drury, now with the LA Angels, just signed a 2-year, $17 million deal. Drury was who? And then Drury was a 123 WRC plus and 3 WAR last year. Did you buy the Drury breakout?
Kinda, but no.
Yes and no. Yeah.
Yes and no, right? Again, cop out, but it wasn't like he was a total slouch in San Diego, right? And through the postseason. Of course, you're going to get the major bump in Cincinnati. That said, this is still a guy that can play a lot of positions, that can do a little bit of everything. And, I'm buying that he is a top 5 utility guy by this definition in baseball. Like, I think that's fair. And I'm buying that he's going to be a valuable piece to the Angels because, again, we talked about this in the past, but like, if you go look at the at-bats, go to Baseball Reference, go look at the statistics from last year, how many at-bats were taken by Andrew Velasquez types or guys that are either in AAA to start this year. David McKinnon. Juan Lagares made starts last year. And I know that's like,
Tyler Wade was making starts.
Tyler Wade was like, there were a lot of dudes that like were below replacement level players. So, I think this is a big upgrade here. I am interested to see what you're going to get from Drury, though, because this guy has shown us flashes of offensive ability in the past, right? Like he had a nice little stretch with the Mets leading into 2022, which lends me to believe that maybe this was for real, right? It was only 51 games, but it's an additional 51 game sample size that we have to reference back to now. And if you go now to his last 200 big league games, he's been good. So, I do think that this guy's going to be an above average, if he's a 110 WRC plus dude that can kind of play all over and give you 15 home runs, it's a really solid player.
Do your best public address impression. Batting 9th and playing shortstop. Number 22, David Fletcher. Come on, man. Like Drury, he's not going to play short. He's going to be the everyday second baseman. I think that he's off this list next year because he's on the second base list. But I mean, we were clamoring for the Angels to go and grab an Elvis Andrus to play short or a Jose Iglesias to play short. But Fletcher, you know what? He made the national team. Granted, it's the Italian national team, but he made the national team.
Hey, he can defend, man. They extended him, so I think he got two more years on the deal. But just for reference to like second half for Drury, 107 WRC plus. Like if he's that, I think the Angels will take that. I think that's what they paid him to be.
Really happy with that. All right, number 3 is in Milwaukee, and he looks like he's going to be the opening day third baseman, and he may be on the third base list next year. Luis Urias with the Brewers. He's going to be on Team Mexico. He's going to hit in the heart of the order for Team Mexico, maybe in the 2-hole. I love Luis Urias. Loved him for a good bit. I know you have too. I know Peter has too. I think the baseball world will finally be introduced to him in an everyday third base role. Urias was filling in at second, at third, at short when Adames was out in Milwaukee. And all the guy does is hit. He was a Padre farmhand. He gets moved to Milwaukee, and he slapped the ball all around. 119 games last year, 2.3 WAR, a 110 WRC plus. That's him. and he can hit some bombs, especially in Milwaukee.
Yeah. And I honestly think the shortstop stint like impacted his WAR, because this is not a shortstop. This was a guy that like jumped in there because he's capable, because he's a good second base and third baseman. And I think that kind of subtracted from the wins above replacement there, because if you had him at second and third all year, I think he's closer to a 3-win guy. And a 3-win season at age 25 is really impressive. He's not even going to be 26 by the time the season starts. So this is a guy that's still young, still getting better. I think he's a big part of what they're doing. And one of the more underrated players in baseball, right? We throw around the word underrated a lot. And sometimes we throw it around for guys that are, pretty well known, but maybe aren't celebrated as much. And I don't know if that's totally what underrated should be labeled as. I think Arias is exactly what underrated should be. It's just a guy that really not enough people know about for how good he is. And I think he's only going to get better, right? I mean, again, he's 25 and just playing not shortstop, I think this year should help him a lot. Not that he played a ton of shortstop, but, he still played enough there where I think it could have impacted him in some ways.
So he played 200 innings at short. And I just want to walk you through his career, starting 2018 with San Diego, going through 2022 with Milwaukee, because he's played 800 innings at second, about 1,200 innings at third, and 1,100 innings at short. This guy, for his career, 3 defensive runs saved, 6 outs above average at second base, 10 defensive runs saved, -3 outs above average at third base, -6 defensive runs saved, -15 outs above average at short.
There you go.
Hampered him. Speaks to your point exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and so no, that's great numbers right there, right? And again, there's the value of just plugging a guy there that's not gonna like totally fuck you, but and that's a testament to him being a good utility guy. But that's an emergency that you don't want to have to resort to. And Willy Adames is a great player that hopefully can just stay on the field all year.
Call me an idiot if you think I'm an idiot after I say this, because I know you already think I'm an idiot, so you don't.
No, I'm nice the rest of the podcast. So
true, forgot about that.
See how diplomatic I can be about this.
That's my idiot coming out, right? I forgot that statement.
No, easy mistake. Anybody could do
that. Rowdy at first, Bryce Terang at second, Willy Adames at short, Luis Arias at third, and when you want to get Rowdy off of his feet in the DH spot, Keston Hiura hops in at first base. I don't hate the infield,
dude. I'm the Brewers kind of cast a spell on me because the Brewers are a very polarizing team, and I tend to be on the positive side of that polarization, for better and for worse. I think they obviously have some questions. That infield's not a problem, and that infield defensively, I think Terang, I've mentioned it, will be one of the best defensive second basemen in baseball this year. We talk about what Arias can do at third. Adames is a good shortstop. And all those guys are no slouches with the stick either. Like, all of those guys are above average bats.
Adames can hit 30. Arias can hit 20 in a full season. Terang can hit 280.
Yeah, and hit 10 to 15 and steal bags. Like, I think a lot of people will be surprised. Like, if we did like infield WAR, that one's going to be up there more than people think. I want an upgrade at first base, but also don't forget Brian Anderson. Like, he's going to rove around there. I know we joke about him. He's a guy that's had 3-win seasons. Like, he's a guy that hits the ball hard and is versatile and plays good defense. And honestly, with a good year, could be an honorable mention on this list next year, and I wouldn't be shocked.
For sure.
Look out for BA in a hitter-friendly ballpark going from Marlins Park to there. If he stays healthy, that's another guy out there that can help them.
I love it. All right. Number 2, Ha-Seong Kim with the Padres. And Kim was the shortstop last year, and he could have been on the shortstop rankings. I think is an honorable mention. He probably doesn't hit enough to break those, but I mean, Kim was at short last year, and he's going to be at second this year, and he was at third in his first year when Machado was out. Like, he does everything. He's played 166 games at short, the majority coming last year, 47 games at third, 21 games at second in his 2 years stateside. His first year, he was dreadful offensively. But last year, a 105 WRC plus and a sub 20% K rate, he walked 9% of the time. That results with how good of a defender Kim is in a 3.7 WAR. Ha-Seong Kim, if he plays a full year, especially at second base, where I think we think he's going to eat, could be a 4-win player.
I would take over 3.5 this year, 100%.
Wow.
It wouldn't blink, really, honestly. Between the defense and the offensive improvements we saw, 109 WRC plus in the second half, and just continue to get better as the season went on. He's at worst, I think, a league average hitter. I think he's a slightly above average hitter now as he continues to get more acclimated and get better. He's a 3.7 at 4 guy last year who got better as the year went on. Gives you speed. He gives you just enough power. He doesn't strike out. And then we talked about the glove. I do wonder, like, I wanted to look at his time in Korea and if he played like anywhere else. He moved around. Obviously, he mostly played shortstop because most of the time he was the best player on his team or one of.
Right.
But like, I do wonder if they're in a certain kind of pinch, would they ever consider throwing Ha-Seong Kim in the outfield? Like, would he be capable out there? Because I feel like this is the kind of guy that you could just put him somewhere and he's going to find a way to be able to make it work. That said, at second base, filling in at short when needed, if needed, this is just a really good utility piece.
Right. Like I'd so much rather have Carpenter drop balls in left than take away Kim's defense in the infield. Does that make sense?
No, that does. That does.
Okay. Which is why they were so willing to move off Tatis at short, because the same argument that you're making, right? Tatis is the best player on the field when he's there. You know, Juan Soto and Machado might be going crazy, and that might not be the case. But Tatis, pretty much every time in his life, he's the most talented player on the field when he's playing the game. Yeah. Why do you move that guy from the position that he plays? Because you have somebody that is an objectively exponentially better defender there, and that's Kim.
5 defense. So he played 148 innings at second base in 2021. 5 defensive runs saved there.
In 148 innings?
Yeah, that's insane. Like, that puts him on pace to probably lead the league in defensive runs saved. And then even at third base, you know, the last 2 seasons combined 6 defensive run saves. And then at shortstop, the last 2 seasons combined 19 defensive run saves. So it's just this simple. No matter where you put him in the infield, you have an above average defender there at least, and probably a plus defender.
A great defender, I think, at every spot. Now, I almost think you're doing his arm a disservice by moving him to second base because he's got a hose. But you know what? You don't have Xander Bogaerts if you can't promise him shortstop.
Yeah, exactly. Which is unfortunate because I do think that, you know, they're technically better off that way. But sometimes you just got to let your superstar be the shortstop, just like in Little League, you know, and just let it be.
These games aren't so different, you know.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. All right. Number 1, and this was really tight between Kim and number 1, but it is Donovan. And we've already talked about Donovan here. It's really hard to argue with a 394 OBP. Impossible. And when you look at utility, like, I think the reason we gave Donovan this edge is because Kim was a shortstop last year. He was, you know, kind of all over in 21, but he'll be the second baseman this year. Donovan was, in his rookie year, in which he won the utility gold glove, the first one ever handed out, 38 games at second, 31 games at third, 20 games in right, 19 games in left, 16 games at first, 7 games at short.
Yeah.
He was everywhere.
Yeah. It's
everywhere and you have a 400 OBP.
Yeah. That's a great way of putting it too, right? Because, like, of course, those 16 games at first, you're giving up power compared to the average first baseman, but you got a 400 OBP. Like, no matter where you put that guy, you're getting above average offensive production, even though his power is very, very, it's not even fringy. It's below average. This guy's found a way to be productive, you know, despite the lack of power. And what's crazy is he's another Ty France effect guy. If you go look at his minor league stats, he has hit at every single stop. Every single stop. He's never had a year in the minor leagues where he struck out more than 20%. He never had a year in the minor leagues where he walked less than 10%. He never had a year in the minor leagues where he had a WRC plus below 127. Jeez. Like, this guy has hit everywhere he has gone. And for whatever reason, he was incredibly overlooked. This guy should have been a top 100 prospect just based on his versatility and his just track record of hitting, but he wasn't. And he slipped right through the cracks with that Ty France effect of just not offering enough crazy tools. Well, guess what? He hedges that by getting on base with the best of them, never striking out, playing wherever you want to play him, and just putting bat on ball. Like, that's just a really, really good player. If he's able to tick up to closer to 400 in the slugging department, I don't know if will ever be able to do that. I mean, then he's looking like a, you know, potential almost all-star there. But even if he's this every single year, exactly 281, 394, 379, which, by the way, was 29% above average if you look at WRC plus, he's going to be one of the better all-around utility guys in baseball, probably the best utility guy in baseball. every single year. And I think F-War doesn't do him justice because he got thrown into some spots that he has barely played and maybe didn't play as phenomenally in the outfield as maybe he will this year. And I think he'll get better and better in the outfield. But the F-War, this is one of those where you got to throw WAR out the window because he is better than whatever the WAR says, because he was literally just the cleanup duty, no matter where you needed him at any point, and found a way to make it happen and be helpful to his team.
Yeah, 100%. He makes boring sexy. That's my final line on Donovan.
Yes.
All right, so that's top 5 utility. Again, 2 honorable mentions: Whit Merrifield and Santiago Espinal, both with the Blue Jays. Number 5, Chris Taylor with the Dodgers. Number 4, Brandon Drury with the Angels. Number 3, Luis Urias with the Brewers. Number 2, Ha-Sung Kim with the Padres. And number 1, Brendan Donovan with the Cardinals. Now DH, 3 honorable mentions and a top 5. 3 honorable mentions, 2 guys that swap places. JD Martinez was with Boston, now in LA. Justin Turner was in LA, now in Boston. And then Daniel Vogelbach with the Mets. Ryan Finkelstein wrote up this list. I feel like that's a Ryan Finkelstein ad in Vogie, but I digress. JD and Turner. Let's start with JD. We've praised his swing since this podcast started in 2021. The swing is crazy. He had a down year last year. I think he's going to bounce back, not in a big way, but I think he's going to bounce back.
Yeah, I do think this was a guy that was just banged up, and with injuries that do kind of impede the swing, and he's a very handsy guy. I'd be shocked if JD Martinez doesn't hit this year, right? They're not asking him to play the outfield. He's 35. I don't think he's over the hill. He's still hitting the ball hard. And even last year, in a down year, a 119 WRC plus, right? This guy still slashed 275, 341, 448.
Yeah.
That's pretty darn good. So even if he's between his 2021 and 2022 season, that's still one of the better DHs in baseball. And he's going to be in a better lineup, and he's just going to have more opportunities with runners aboard. He's going to get pitched to a little bit more. I hope he plays well, because this is somebody that I've just really enjoyed watching him grow into, at his peak, one of the best power hitters in baseball. I mean, don't forget, he had 45 home runs in 2017.
Because he lifts. He's not an exit velo darting.
167 WRC plus in 2017 and a 170 WRC plus in 2018. We haven't seen many guys produce back-to-back seasons like that that aren't considered among the best hitters in the game. And he's too good to not age well. So I don't think this is him on the downtick. I do think he bounces back.
Right. And he's not an exit velo guy at all. He is, and we were just talking to Taylor Davis about this on Show and Go, both of us. Go listen to that. We talked kind of about prospect pedigree. And I think it was right before we started recording. We were talking about Chris Bryant. He said, his BP, it's not like the eye-popping BP that you see from guys that hit 500-foot home runs during batting practice. But Taylor said it best. He finds a way to hit the ball 5 feet over every fence.
Yeah.
And that feels very JD Martinez.
100%. And I think that's when you don't have that freak power, when you have an injury like a back injury that's bothering you, which I think was the case for him. It was adductor back and then an undisclosed injury. If that impacts your power a little bit, all of a sudden, you're going to see that downtick a lot more than maybe the average power hitter who's not totally himself like a Mike Trout, but he's still able to kind of just hit it hard enough to get over the wall. With a guy like JD, might feel it a little bit more in terms of the power output. And I think we saw that last year.
Yeah. Justin Turner, the next honorable mention, 37-year-old at the time, now 38-year-old Justin Turner, post All-Star break, put up a 152 WRC plus. He slashed 319, 386, 503. Again, 16 stitches in his face after Matt Manning hit him with a fastball. But if he is unfazed by this, there's a chance that this is a steal of a deal for Chaim Bloom and the Red Sox.
I think it will be a steal of a deal, and obviously hope he's okay and has a quick recovery. I think this is he just seems like the kind of guy to go right back at him. Remember Kevin Pillar? I feel like he's cut from the similar cloth, hit in the face, just right back as soon as possible, and just fearless. I do see Justin Turner as that kind of guy. The second half was phenomenal because we were wondering kind of, is this guy cooked, at 37 and the way he looked in the first half. But clearly he just was a little off with his timing or whatever it may be. And obviously he's got a huge leg kick. So if things are a little bit off, maybe he can be a little bit more susceptible to that kind of stretch. But we've never really seen him have that kind of stretch. So it was interesting. But to bounce back from that and have the second half that he had, where you mentioned the WRC, but he hit 320. Like he slugged 500. And now you're plugging him in one of the most hitter-friendly ballparks. Like, couldn't you just see him playing Pepper with the Green Monster all day long? Like, I think he's going to do that. And I think he's going to be one of the better hitters in that lineup from the jump.
I think so too. I wonder how many Red Sox people said the name Tony Conigliaro yesterday. It's like, this always happens to us. But I mean, that's one of the worst stories in baseball. If you want to go read up on Tony Conigliaro, because that guy was like,
very sad.
He was perennial all-star caliber, and then he was never the same after he was hit in the face. I am with you. It is way more likely for Turner, and I think it's great to hear that this was like surface level, because Tony C was, I think it broke some bones. Like I think it broke an orbital bone.
Yeah, no, he was never the same.
Never the same. So I do expect Turner to bounce back. Again, really scary situation. And I can close my eyes and envision Red Sox fans just like seeing the Tony Conigliaro video that they've seen in their childhood. Yeah.
Fortunately, I think it's not going to have that kind of effect on Turner, both mentally and obviously not physically. So hopefully he gets back soon. I have a feeling he's going to try to get back there as soon as possible, because the longer you wait, kind of the more it kind of like festers in your mind.
I'm sure. Daniel Vogelbach, the third honorable mention. Righty masher. He should be in the lineup every time the Mets face a right-handed starter.
Yeah, I want to see like a platoon of him and Vientos, who put on a fucking show when I went the other day. Yeah. That was fun to watch. What makes Vogelbach so good is just his patience, man. This guy will take his walks. What sucks, though, is when you are a guy that walks a ton and you are one of the slowest runners in Major League Baseball, it is a little bit less valuable. Yeah. That said, it's still extremely valuable when you get on base at a 360 clip, which is what he did last year. He's a good hitter, man. It's that simple. And I think he's a best shape of his life candidate right now. So, you got to keep your eye on that. But I think when you produce a 1.5 FWAR as a DH who, really doesn't run at all, like he has 0 stolen bases in 467 games. I'd venture to say that he may never steal a base. And if he does, it'll be like one of those fluky ones. He just mashes and he gets on base. A 16% walk rate in his career is pretty remarkable. I mean, that's impressive stuff and sustainably good.
So number 5 is Eloy Jimenez, and Eloy has played 316 games in 4 years. If you average all his numbers out over 162, he's hitting 275 with an 830 OPS, 28 doubles, 36 homers, and 108 driven in. That's like borderline best DH in baseball. Problem is, game totals, 122 in 2019, 55 in 2020. Nothing you can do about that. He won a Silver Slugger in 2020. 2021, 55 games. They played 162 that year. They didn't play 60 that year. And then 84 games in 2022. He and Luis Robert are both made of glass, and it really frustrates White Sox fans, including yours truly. But Eloy, when he's on the field, you see why he was the best hitting prospect in the game.
Yeah. He hit 295 last year with the kind of power that he offers is insane. I mean, if you extrapolate those numbers, and I think it's a fair extrapolation. I hate when people like extrapolate from like 40 games. We're extrapolating for more than half the season here. That would have been one of the better offensive campaigns in the AL Central, right? Like he would have been on pace for about 30 home runs, and he was hitting over almost 300. That's really impressive stuff. It really isn't a matter of like, can he hit curveballs? Can he hit fastballs? How's his approach? Is he aggressive? Sure, but it doesn't really matter because he actually walked as much as he ever did last year. I think he actually figured some things out last season in terms of it was the best K to BB rate we've seen from him in his professional career or in his big league career. And that's even including the ridiculous 2019 season he had. So I think this is the best version hitting wise that we've seen of Eloy Jimenez. I think he's continued to mature. I really liked what we saw from him last year. And if he's on the field, I do think that he will be one of the best offensive players in that division and will be arguably the best hitter on that team. So I hope he stays healthy. And it's a testament to to how talented he is that he's on this list, given how little he's played over the last couple of years.
I want him in the dugout for 95% of the game.
Yeah, he needs to relax on the defense thing, man. Like, just it's fine. Just don't play it. Well, why do you want to play out there?
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it, because when you're not tearing a pec by like fake climbing a wall, you're like running into netting and you look like an idiot when you're out there. Like, it is, Vaughn and Sheets grade out really poorly defensively, but nobody fails the eye test more aggressively than Eloy Jimenez.
Negative 17 outs above average in his career in the outfield.
I mean, I'm telling you, like, I see all 17 outs above average just being relinquished. Dude. So not only does he fail the metrics, but he fails the eye test defensively, but he passes it with flying colors. Number 4 is Giancarlo, 110 games last year, hit 211 with a 30% K rate, but 31 homers, and he's Giancarlo freaking Stanton. Like, he's going to be 4. Has to be 4.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what we get from him this year. Like, it was a down year, I'd say, right? I mean, he's always going to strike out around 30%, but 211 we don't usually see from him, right? He's always going to be a relatively high BABIP guy for a home run heavy hitter because of how hard he hits the ball when he does hit it on the ground. But yeah, it's kind of surprising that he hit 211 last year. Like, it almost is like you're like, wait, what? It's also the first season that he hasn't got on base at a 300 clip. It also shows you that he can still remain productive despite that, which is why he's still a top 5 DH and 31 home runs. He's got 66 home runs over the last 2 years, and he's going to hit 500 most likely, health dependent, which means it's going to be interesting to see if he makes that Cooperstown case. But, I just would love to see him just give me one season kind of close to the 2017 form of him, which was 59. His prime. I don't think it'll never happen, but like, imagine that year. He did that in Marlins Park, I think, before they moved the walls in. Imagine what, like, if you put that season in Yankee Stadium, he would have hit like 70, I think. He had 59 in Marlins Park. Think about that. Yeah. So, I just want to see something closer to that. That's why I was so excited about him going to New York, because I was like, oh my God, what is he going to do there home run wise? And we haven't quite seen that. The good news is that the baseline has been upped because he's a guarantee for 30, even when he has a poor year like last year. How do you feel about him? Like, do you think he's slowing down as a guy that's been hurt plenty of times in his career? That, has a swing that incorporates his whole body and it's a swat. Like, do you think he's better than last year or the same as last year? Or
I think he's the same. Like, I think that's the new normal for really? Giancarlo.
That's sad.
It is sad. And like, I'm not talking max, because obviously Giancarlo leads in max all the time. Now that O'Neal Cruz is in the fold, O'Neal Cruz is probably going to lead in max exit velo. Like, O'Neal hit 122 miles an hour. Yeah. Giancarlo 119.8. Like, he's the only other guy that got to 120 last year. But average exit velocity, 3 guys in Major League Baseball average 95 plus, which is a hard hit baseball. Like, hard hit is 95 plus. It was Judge, Yordan Alvarez, Giancarlo Stanton. That's Giancarlo. Problem is, I think he's going to make contact less and less. That swing, like, it doesn't really play for a guy that's aging. It plays for a 25-year-old. Yeah, no, it ages terribly. So yeah. I think the 30% K rate's here to stay, unfortunately, because that was actually not him. You mentioned batting average typically higher, K rate typically lower. But I think that the 30 homer baseline is here to stay. He's going to figure it out. I just think he's a 3 true outcome guy now.
And there's some like alarming metrics. Yeah, like a 7% downtick in his zone contact, which is, as you get older, you're just a little slower. You swing through pitches a little bit more. 90th percentile exit velocity dropped by a mile per hour, still among the best in Major League Baseball. You don't see 114 mile per hour, 90th percentile exit velocity. That's a joke. That's right. Better than 98% of players' max exit velocities. But that is a possibility. It is a possibility. And I was kind of hoping that with the year that Aaron Judge was having, Giancarlo would seem more to hit and kind of feast on that. We'll see if he can build on that this year, if he's made any changes. But, I can subscribe to the idea, and I don't want to subscribe. It's reluctantly, but I can subscribe to the idea that, this is kind of the new norm, which is still a top 5 DH, by the way. It's 30 home runs, and it's a decent on-base percentage. But, I still think he can be a little bit better than last year. I do think he can still be a little bit better.
Yeah, and here's the thing, though. Like, I think Giancarlo was kind of victim of roster or lineup construction by Aaron Boone, because Judge was hitting leadoff last year.
That is true. He
Like,
didn't really reap the rewards of that too much.
Yeah, like Giancarlo's not going to be given things to hit because he's hitting in front of Aaron Judge if there's nobody hitting in front of Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
So
no, I think that is fair. And that's why they tried to put him second a lot. And he actually did hit better in the 2-hole than he did. I'm looking at the splits right now. They put him in the 3-hole. He struggled there. They put him in the 4-hole. He was pretty solid there. They put him in the 5-hole, and in 91 plate appearances, he was best there. I would love to just see him in the 5-hole. Judge should be in the middle of your order, right. And a good Giancarlo Stanton protects him. But I do wonder. What their approach is going to be this year, because I understand wanting to have Aaron Judge lead off. You want to have that guy hit as much as possible, especially with how things were at times in the second half of that offense. And you want to see him get as many pitches to hit. And you're not going to walk the leadoff guy as frequently as you would walk Judge if he was hitting third or fourth.
Right. Number 3 got to the World Series, Kyle Schwarber with the Philadelphia Phillies. And Schwarber played in 155 games. It's a journey defensively. He's probably going to have to play left this year, but he is a DH by trade. 46 homers, 94 driven in. Don't care what the K rate is. 46 homers plays. It was second in all of baseball, only to Judge.
And he's proven that he'll remain productive no matter how high the K rate is. Like that, I think that's more than proven, right? Like this guy's going to walk a ton. He's rarely going to miss a hanger, and he's going to hit you just 30 to 40 home runs basically every single year. Schwarber has become one of the most consistent power hitters, I think, in baseball. And he also hedges the swing and miss with one of the lower chase rates you're going to see. And it's just that simple. He's got the recipe down.
If I'm not mistaken, it was the 2017-18 offseason that Kyle Schwarber changed his life and changed his career, because he was a beefy boy, right? He was big burly man, and then he made a diet and exercise change, and he looked like he was carved out of what's the stone? I'm having a brain fart right now.
No
marble
idea.
Yeah, marble, carved out of marble. SpongeBob thing, right? But he looked sculpted, right? And he said a lot of it was watching what I eat, especially post game. These post game spreads, they're so caloric, they just sit in your gut while you sleep. Might as well eat something a little bit better. And he transformed his body. That was after 30 homers in 129 games, but he hit 211. He hit 218 this past year, but the power production has always been there, man. I mean, it was 26 in 2018, 38 in 19, 11 in 2020, which was equivalent to 30, 32 in 2021. And here we are, 46, leading the National League in 2022. And oh, by the way, guy's been on the field 113 games in 2021, but 59 out of 60 in 20. Since he made that diet change, 137 in 2018, 155 in 2019, and 155 in 2022. Changed his life.
Swiped 10 bags last year. Low key.
Sneaky. 10 for 11.
10 for 11. That short porch in right field in Philadelphia is just so perfect for him too. He could probably pop a ball up and it gets out of there. And he uses the whole field well too. So he can go out the other way there. It's a perfect stadium for him. I think if he's in the DH role, he might even be even more consistent offensively. And again, I think you mentioned he's probably going to have to play in the field a bit more. But last year, his third season with a slugging percentage above 500, it's pretty damn good. And with the shift limitations, this is probably a guy that's going to see the batting average jump up a little bit. 240 BABIP last year. He's a 268 BABIP guy for his career. I'd imagine that we'll see that BABIP tick up a little bit. And that could mean he's closer to a 230 hitter. That changes everything, because if he's closer to a 230 hitter, he's closer to a 340 on base guy, and he's going to slug 500. That's going to be a pretty impactful. He might somehow up his offensive production from last year, even if he doesn't totally match the home run total.
Right. I think so as well, man. I think that we could be looking at that 240 guy with 35 homers, which would be awesome. Number 2 is Shohei Ohtani. Just doing the pitching dive. We're working on top 30 starting pitchers. Ohtani, in everything but innings pitched, was better than Max Fried. And he's the number 2 DH in baseball. So I know it's, we talk about it all the time, but like that's crazy to me. Think about if Max Fried hit 34 homers, drove in 95, and hit 273 with the 356 OBP.
Well, Max Fried kind of rakes. I don't know if
does he 34 homer rake?
No, but I do think he if you gave him a full season, I think he could give you like 4 or 5.
4. Yeah, and he would hit what, 2
if 180 to 210. It's pretty nasty. No, I mean, this guy's incredible, and I'm excited to talk about Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, because I don't think there's really ever been much question about Shohei Ohtani, the hitter. Not saying that there was question about Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher, but there was like how we didn't really know what Ohtani's ceiling was. Like we maybe even a couple of years ago could have seen him potentially going to the bullpen.
Wasn't Peter pitching closer?
Yeah. And honestly, like we didn't have a visceral reaction to it. Like it wasn't the craziest thing in the world. I think it was a fair question given that he's a two-way guy that was coming off of Tommy John. And it wasn't like he was straight up dominating every 5th day. He was really good, really solid, wasn't dominating every 5th day. We're seeing a guy that has blossomed as he's continued to tweak his arsenal. His fastball keeps getting better. His command keeps getting better. We're seeing a guy that's blossomed into one of the best pitchers in baseball, period. So that's pretty cool. But Shohei Ohtani, the hitter, kind of similar though. Like I thought that what we saw was kind of what we were going to get. And it seems like he keeps getting better though offensively. You look at the second half, I think he got better as the year went on. I'm pulling up the splits, but this was arguably, I would say, I guess you got to look at 2021 was a better season with 46 pumps.
Right.
But arguably this was his most well-rounded offensive season, right? Yeah. He hit 273. He hit 34 home runs. He struck out at the lowest rate of his career. I would argue that this was his most well-rounded offensive season, and this was on top of pitching. So I think there's a new norm here, and it's that Shohei Ohtani is going to hit around 270, hit 30-plus home runs. And I think that the question before was, what was he going to hit average-wise, especially after seeing that average dip to like 257 the year before? Clearly, this guy is good enough in the bat-to-ball department too.
So you mentioned that 24% K rate was the lowest of his career. I thought his walk rate would be really high. He was 15% in 21. He was 11% this past year. Feel like he wasn't getting much to hit. And Ohtani was getting gypped a lot. Like there were a lot of, like those compilation videos of Ohtani getting screwed by like on the corner calls. I don't know why, but Ohtani hits the shit out of the ball. Do you have 90th percentile exit velo for that guy? Because I mean, it's 92.7 is average exit velo for Ohtani. And he pumps out 117s, 118s, and the ball goes 470 feet sometimes. Ohtani is a hitter that you should be fearing. It is absolutely insane. Dude, like he 108
is which is elite, absolutely elite.
Yeah, I mean, if he was like full-time hitter, he's probably doing this. He was a 5.5 win pitcher. He was 3.8 WAR just from being a DH,
which you just don't see. You just don't see that. And I want to see the walks closer to that 15% mark. I am interested to see how that looks this year. He does swing more than you think. And maybe it's because he was getting gypped. Maybe it was because of the way that, he's been umpired, which is really weird. Like he does get a lot of borderline calls going against him. I don't know if it's because of the way he sets up or the way he kind of like leans out. I have no idea. But, a chase rate right near 30%, it's not egregious, but it's higher. I'm interested to see, like, if he walks at that 15% clip and hits the way he hits last year, that's one of the best hitters all around in baseball. He's close to 160 WRC plus there, if he can get that walk rate back up to like the 13, 14, 15% range.
Yeah, 100%. And number one, he's probably going to play some corner outfield this year, but Yordan Alvarez, the only guy that can unseat Ohtani in the DH conversation, is a guy that is same zone contact as some of the best in baseball. He was a 300 hitter, 135 games. He hit 306 with a 406 OBP and a 613 slug, 37 homers, 97 RBIs, 19% K rate, 14% walk rate. Motherfucker had a 185 WRC plus this year.
Yeah. That it's just a joke, honestly. Like if I could create like statistically speaking, like just a framework of the kind of hitting prospects like through each threshold of zone contact, exit velocity, and swing decisions. If there's any player that is within the realm of Yordan Alvarez in those three categories, I'd be willing to bet my life on them succeeding as a player, as a prospect, and as a player. Like those are the things I'm looking at, and it's amazing how he is able to hit for consistent contact. It's 88% zone contact while hitting the living shit out of the ball at the same time. You just don't see that. And specifically, what might be the most incredible thing is sinkers, which we see more and more in today's game. And they try to get him to roll over on these sinkers. And he I think they stopped throwing them to him because I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it. He saw 330 sinkers last year, 98% zone contact. And sinkers typically don't get as much swing and miss, but this motherfucker was, when he swung, connecting with 98 of 100 sinkers in the strike zone. Think about that. Like that's unheard of.
Dude, I pulled up guys that have the same swinging strike percentage as Yordan Alvarez. Marcus Semien, Whit Merrifield, Kyle Farmer. Semien's the only one that's kind of close power-wise, but he's nowhere close.
And it's nowhere close. Yeah, and approach-wise, it's nowhere close.
So he makes as much contact as Whit Merrifield and Kyle Farmer.
Like, think about that, dude. And just for perspective, like some of the best hitting teams in baseball, like the Dodgers as a team, around 84% zone contact. And that's including like the bat to ball guys that don't hit for any power. Yordan is a better bat to ball guy than the bat to ball guys, then also has more power than the power guys. Like it's just that simple. And then has a better approach than most of the, approach oriented guys. He's just good at everything. He checks every single box when it comes to an offensive, just what you're looking for out of a hitter. And then of course the swing is majestic. And then the intangibles, like it feels like anytime there's a big moment, he's going yard, or at least picking up a big hit. And it just seems like even lefties, he hits lefties really well. His splits are good. He hits fastballs. He hits breaking balls. He hits changeups. He hits sinkers. He hits four seamers. The one minor blue zone is fastballs at the top of the zone. That's the same blue zone that Mike Trout has, and both of them excel at not chasing. If it's one ball up, they won't swing. If it's an 0-0 pitch, they'll take it for a strike and say, locate it two more times up there. Maybe with two strikes, they'll battle more. But if you tug it down 6 inches, it's over the wall. So you got to live on the edge. And pitchers, they got to be perfect up there. Most of the time they're not. And that's why you got guys like Yordan and Mike Trout doing what they're doing. And I don't think Yordan's slowing down anytime soon. It is injured, though. And I don't think he's totally swinging yet. Yeah. I am concerned about that. But, that aside, when Yordan's healthy, he's one of the best hitters we've seen in the last several decades. I think he's on track to be that kind of guy.
I was going to say, yes or no question to end the pod. Is Yordan the best hitter in the game right now? Best hitter. Because obviously player, like he's a DH or a subpar corner outfielder. I'm talking at the plate. Is there anybody you want to start a team with? If the game was offense, is there anybody that you want to start a team with more than Yordan Alvarez?
After what we saw last year, I don't think so. I think he is the best hitter right now in baseball. Find me a guy that hits 300 while slugging 600, not named like Barry Bonds.
Exactly.
And like I'd love to see the 300, 600, like even the 346. How many guys over the last however many decades? Let's cue this up and we'll talk about it, on the next podcast. How many guys have gone 346 in the last however many years? I don't think there's been many that have gone 3-4-6, especially in the last 20 years where we've seen this game just become so pitching dominant. 3-4-6 with a strikeout rate below 20%.
Yeah.
I think there's a very short list of players who have done that.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man, I think my answer, and like I've thought about it a lot, I think my answer is yes going into this year. He's the best hitter in baseball, especially after what we saw from Soto last year. And Trout Trout's obviously 40 homers in 120 games, but he's not a 300 hitter. And he's got some swing and miss. Like Yordan is perfect, I think.
Yeah. And I think if Trout's 100% healthy and playing the whole season, he's probably the best offensive force. But most well-rounded hitter, I don't think there's a more well-rounded hitter than Yordan.
Yeah, and it's really tight, but I do think Yordan is the best hitter in baseball. He is the best DH in baseball as well. Every link you need in the episode description. Tons of cool stuff coming up on a whole bunch of other podcasts around the network, including a conversation with Oakland prospect Mason Miller, who you are enamored with, huh?
He is minor league baseball's most anonymous 100-mile-per-hour thrower, I think, and he like sits 100 in the A system. I'm really excited to talk to him because he didn't even know he was diagnosed as he was diagnosed as a diabetic at age like 19, 20, type 1 diabetes, and was figured out, oh, that's why I've been losing 30 plus pounds. So we're going to talk about that whole, just experience for him, figuring that out, and how coming back from that, he goes to Gardner-Webb in his COVID year and sits upper 90s, 3rd-round pick, and the rest is history. I think this guy's going to be one of the biggest breakout prospects in baseball this year with an awesome story. So excited to be able to air that for you guys on the call up. So look out for that in the next couple of days as well.
You root for resilience, and Mason Miller has certainly shown that in droves. So again, every link you need in the show notes. Peter and I back to talk to you guys tomorrow.